I'm Joan Sargent. I'm the pastoral co-ordinator of the Spurriergate Centre in York. Well, I was 17, nearly 18, and I was working in an office in Oldham in Lancashire. Can you spot the Lancashire accent? And I was working in an office with 13 women, and a new girl came to work with us. And I always said to people, she was called Little Anne, and she introduced me to Jesus. I introduced her to my brother, and they've been happily married for 30 odd years. Well, it was amazing because at that time I was really thinking about where am I going in my life, what are some of the things I'm going to get involved in, and somebody had died who I'd known, who was quite young, and it had really made me ask some questions. And what I liked about Anne was that she was fun, but also we, in an office of 13 women, we used to talk about everything under the sun. But Anne was always willing to sort of say, well, I actually think this and I believe this. And I began to admire this person because I just thought to myself, she's got something that I haven't got. And I realised, because we used to be going out clubbing and all sorts of things, having fun, but I used to ask questions. There was a bit of emptiness. But Anne, who was involved in church and seemed to have a purpose in her life, I just thought to myself, what is it about Jesus Christ? And so through her, I really started thinking about who is Jesus and how can I get to know him for myself. The process of going to church, reading the Bible. I bought a Bible on my own, which was really funny because I knew nothing about the Bible. I didn't know there were translations of the Bible, but I found a Bible that I could read, John's Gospel, and as I read about the stories of Jesus, I thought, when people met with Jesus, they either didn't like him and went away, or their lives were changed. And I kept asking myself, could I, Joan Sargent, have a personal relationship with Jesus? Could I have an encounter with Jesus? I went to church, listened to what the preachers were saying, but it was one night in an open air meeting, on Halloween actually, outside Oldham Town Hall, when these people were telling people about Jesus, that I got into a conversation with a young man who was revving up right loud on his bike, but he came and talked to us and he asked us what we were doing, and I started telling him about Jesus and about how God has sent Jesus to die on the cross for our sin. This lad said to me, what's sin? And it made me think, yeah, actually, sin is something that we all do. We all do wrong things, and it separates us from God. And I told him about how God loved us so much that even though we all sinned and there was a separation between us, that he sent Jesus to die for us. And so this young man said to me, how do I get into a right relationship with God? And I said, well, you've got to believe that Jesus died for you and ask him to come and live his life through you and ask him to forgive you for so far living your life without him. And he said, have you ever done that? And I said, no, I just started going to this church. And he said to me, Joan, if you really believe this, why don't you do it? And I went home that night and I knew that I personally had to respond to the love of God and what Jesus had done for me. So that night, just myself and God, I started talking to God. Never really had a relationship with God, didn't really know anything about prayer, but I asked God to forgive me and I asked him to come and live his life. I said, thank you God, I believe that you're there, I like your book, I don't understand half of it, but I'd like to get to know more about you, and I really want to ask you to come into my life. Thank you for dying for me on the cross, and will you help me to be a follower of yours? And that was when I was just 18, and I'm now 54, and I'm on this great adventure through thick and thin, through all sorts of things in life, and there's been lots of ups and downs, but I'm passionate about sharing with people about the love of God. Well, I said to people, I work in a church where hundreds of people come in and out every day, and the only day we're shut normally is a Sunday, but it's a church with a difference, and it's a 12th century church in the heart of York, but it's a Christian centre. It's a 120-seater restaurant, we have 2 shop areas, we have premises next door, we run a counselling service, but what are we about? We're about Christians sharing God's love with the people of York and its visitors. So we're a very busy restaurant, but we do all sorts of things to share God's love. We have a prayer zone. On Sundays, we have started doing some Sundays where we do a big PowerPoint presentation. We do a prayer zone downstairs. We have a children's activity table. Sometimes we do daytime alpha courses or book groups. We have a knitting group. But what it's all about is just being alongside people and sharing the love of God and sharing what we have and what we've received from God ourselves. So it's a very exciting place, and it's a place to share the good news of Jesus Christ.